Hello and welcome to episode 220 of Sudden Impact Family Style. I'm Jason.
And I'm Bill, and it's been an interesting week.
Bye bye
Before we
LeBron.
get to the NBA, I want to talk about the John Rahm situation.
Okay.
I mean, if you're vaccinated, you don't have to take the daily test, so obviously he wasn't vaccinated. And so he had to keep taking the daily test. And to be able to risk, you're leading a tournament by 6 strokes, and then have to withdraw, and you might not even be able to play the U.S. Open now because of the quarantining things. I mean, it just goes to show you how important it is to get a vaccine, because you can pick it up from anybody. You can get it. If people aren't vaccinated, there's still a danger. Just because things are coming back to normal now doesn't mean it's over.
No.
So please get your freaking shot.
Yeah.
And there's a lot more to lose than being disqualified from a golf tournament.
And we've both been vaccinated for close to 2 months, right?
Yeah.
And so far, I haven't been I don't think I've had any side effects as far as I can tell.
And in fact, you've been vaccinated even though you had COVID, and a lot of people that said, "Well, I had COVID, I'm not going to be vaccinated." You don't know. Nobody knows.
No.
So get the shot. And I'll get off the soapbox and we're going to start talking about the NBA.
And as you know from growing up as your son, I am as anti-authoritative,
Yes,
distrustful as anybody. And even at this point, I was like, look, the majority of scientists are saying this is what to do, and I just did it.
Yeah.
It's the best answer we have right now. So just.
All right. So tell everybody why you're worried about the NBA playoffs.
Well, I guess I shouldn't be. I picked Brooklyn to win, and James Harden went out, about 5 minutes into that first game?
No, he went off in the first minute.
First minute. Okay, so it didn't even last 5 minutes. And I know the game, I think, was a 9-point game, and, Milwaukee was, quote-unquote, in it. But they're just really good. And with, sort of this changing of the guard, as we're going to be excited about with some of the young guys that are in the playoffs right now. If Brooklyn can be this good against Milwaukee, and I know it was one game, yada, 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 all that kind of stuff, but, missing James Harden, I don't see anybody beating them.
It would be disruptive losing him a minute into a game.
Oh, yeah.
So your game plan for that game went right out the window. And
as we talked about offline, Joe Harris is probably of the modern era big threes. And by modern era, I'm pretty much talking about, from the 90s on. Because I know you could go back to, Magic, Worthy, Kareem, Bird, Mikhail Parrish, and obviously prior to that. But those were all teams that were put together via the draft for the most part, as opposed to, 3 superstars deciding to play together. And you could argue that LeBron, Bosh, Wade was the first of those.
Mm-hmm.
That team was not, they didn't win at all, obviously, the first year, but, outside of Udonis Haslem, there was nobody else on this team. And, like we said, Joe Harris is probably the best version of just a fourth scorer you could ask for in this situation. And somebody that's a good enough shooter and athletic enough that he can be your third scorer given night to night. Blake Griffin, you thought he was washed, but he's clearly not washed. And then you add in guys like Claxton and Bruce Brown, and they have a nice team on top of, 3 of the best scorers in NBA history.
And me and a lot of other people thought it was going to be a struggle to share the ball, and we thought it was going to take time for people to adjust and figure out their roles.
But
obviously not.
And I think when you look at, just the year we've had, coming out of the bubble, still dealing with COVID, all the political aspects, Kyrie Irving just walking away from the team and not talking to anybody, Kevin Durant missing a ton of time, the trade with Indiana. You go down the list, Steve Nash has really put together a great, at least, resume for Coach of the Year.
I agree. And he probably is not going to get enough credit for having meld all those personalities and get everybody on board.
No, and you look at the beginning where, you got a guy like Kyrie Irving mouthing off about not even needing a coach. And, this team is, I think the other team is, the people wondered, are they going to share the ball? Which clearly they're doing. And then the other thing was, are they going to play defense? And they're a pretty good half-court defensive team,
It seems like you've taken the best of what D'Antoni had and made it work, and then picked up the defense and the other things you needed to do.
Yeah. Because again, like I said, between is it Claxton and Brown, you've got two great defenders, and everybody else is more than athletically capable of defending, and they seem to be doing it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like they're not a turnstile or a train wreck like people thought they might be. So, you know,
Yeah.
like I think they can win this series without Harden, and
You know, what Milwaukee lacks, though, I mean, they don't have that emotional, fiery leader. I don't think. I just don't see that on that team. I mean, they're a good team, they're a methodical team, but they're not they're not what I would call a passionate team. Whereas, like Atlanta, I would call Atlanta a passionate team.
yeah,
I would call the Knicks a passionate team. I would call the Suns a passionate team. The Lakers a passionate team. I wouldn't call the Mavericks a passionate team. And I wouldn't call Milwaukee a passionate team, even though they're very good teams. I just wouldn't call them a passionate team.
well, I think Luka and Giannis are both emotional people. I mean, Luka clearly, based on the fact that he gets thrown out of every other game with technical fouls. Man, has a lot of passion, wears it on his sleeve. But I think the other thing, like, we talked about the depth of scoring that you have in Brooklyn, even with one of the best scorers in the NBA not playing. Milwaukee, you know, you lose DiVincenzo, who's not a great player by any stretch, but once you get past their three, they have nobody that can score. And I still really want to see a great coach with Giannis. Because I think, you know, he's never going to be a perfect offensive player. Like, you look at the way he shoots, at least he's willing to try, unlike some players in other cities. But he's probably never going to be an elite outside scorer. But it just seems like there's an offense that can be run that's going to be far better than what's happening there, you know?
Right.
And, you know, you just figure, you know, whoever the Bill Belichick, and he's my go-to example, I guess, in the quarter of my lifetime of great coaching, you know, sadly. And not because he's not a great coach, just because of what he's done to my favorite team. But I think he would have Giannis as just that he'd be terrified. Not that you're not terrified of Giannis, but I think he would just take it to another level. And that's why, and I'll just go off, I'll pop over here before we go to more playoff talk, but the Magic, please just hire me as your maker of common sense. Because every hire you've made during my time since you've been a franchise has been terrible. And the fact that you're thinking about bringing in Terry Stotts as your new coach after you botched your last hire is just absolutely asinine. Just asinine. And whoever's over there should be fired because it's ridiculous. I don't care that he has experience and Portland went to the playoffs. That team does not make adjustments. That team is Dame Lillard and CJ McCollum making shots. There's no coaching there. And if you're going to bring in another uninspired and bad fit hire, then you just deserve every crap you get. But that's a little tangent for me.
All right.
Every hire they've made as coach has been terrible. Just indefensible in my mind. And Terry Stotts would be a continuation
All
of
we're hearing
that.
is recycled names. We're not hearing anybody new, anybody innovative.
No. And again, I understand the importance of having been ahead. You can be like, well, Terry Stotts has been to the playoffs. He's had Dame Lillard and a pretty good team in Portland that, you know, has been a 7th, 8th, or 9th seed for the most part since he's been there. That's not
first-round exit almost annually.
And a first-round exit almost annually. And a team that just never seems to do anything interesting. And it's just a bummer. But on a positive note, as we talked about a little bit offline, the other exciting thing about this playoff, despite the fact that I think Brooklyn's just going to roll, look at all the young guys that have advanced to round 2, with the potential of another one advancing to round 2 today, and Doncic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, Trae Young got to the second round, and he might get to the second round before Luka, which would make Atlanta fans pretty happy. Jokic.
Devin Booker dispatched LeBron in the first round for the first time in LeBron's career.
The first time in his career. And I know he had CP3 and you had some injuries on the other side, but that's still Phoenix and Devin Booker. You got Jokic, probably easily the MVP in my mind. I don't see anybody else even being in the conversation really this year.
No.
They made it to the second
Mitchell
round.
Utah.
Donovan Mitchell in Utah. The Knicks don't really have a young guy that you're super excited about, but they made the playoffs this year, which is great for them. I mean, I just feel like it's nice to see, you know, this new era of star kind of making it, you know?
Yeah.
And even though
it bodes well.
And even though they beat them 4-1, I mean, you had Kevin Durant pretty much saying he views Tatum as a young guy in the mold of a Kobe, LeBron kind of player.
That's a big statement.
And that's a big statement, and KD's not, I mean, he's certainly, but for him to anoint Tatum, an opposing player, is pretty impressive, I think.
I agree. To me, that's a huge statement. And with all the regard they had for Kobe, if you're saying this guy embodies Kobe, that's big. That's big.
It is. And again, that's another team with a young star. But I guess, as I went on my rant about Orlando Magic coaching, what do you think about the situation in Boston right now?
Interesting. I mean, you knew they were going to blow it up. You knew they were going to make a change. I don't know that moving Brad Stevens up is the change.
Right.
I mean, I think you needed a new coach. Where you're making this decision on Brad Stevens is beyond me. I don't understand it.
Because I think it seemed pretty clear, at least over the last 2 seasons, that, well, he certainly would be offered a number of jobs. I don't know if Brad Stevens would have taken a coaching job this next year. Like, he seemed like he was pretty burnt out. And I think that's perfectly natural in that environment, in that position.
Sure.
And, maybe you're going to make an inspired hire at coach and bring in somebody that, can figure out what to do with that team. And maybe you hope that Brad Stevens was rubbed off by Danny Ainge or something along those lines. But it seems sort of weird on some level.
I thought it was very odd. And it's not what, if you want to move Danny Ainge out, I understood that. If I was moving him out, move out both of them.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see where it goes. I mean, it's just odd.
Because Brad Stevens seemed like, he was a nice college coach, had that great run at Butler. And then I know you could say he's been very successful in the NBA, but you could also argue that, they've sort of underachieved with all the talent that they've had on some weird level, despite going to 3 Eastern Conference Finals. Like, we can't not knock that, but at the same time, it's been like, sometimes I feel like you have to look less at the facts on the paper and more like the surrounding facts. Like, who did they beat to get to that spot? How much money did you spend as an organization? You look at the way he handled Gordon Hayward coming back, the Kyrie Irving situation. Like, there's definitely been some coaching things where you probably aren't very happy of him as a coach. And it seems like he's sort of, is the rah-rah guy coming out of Butler, the young coach that took that upstart team really far. I feel like he's riding that, all the way to the front office. And maybe he'll do a great job. I don't know. It just seemed like sort of a weird situation.
Like you said, I just don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, I guess you're worried that you don't want Stevens to go coach somewhere else would be the only reason. Unless, like I said, a guy with no experience in the front office.
Stevens might elect to go back to college.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody knows what's going. You never know what's going to happen. I just think it's a strange move that you're saying, okay, this guy's our guy to pick our players and help us rebuild our team. And really, Danny Ainge was a great GM. So I mean, some of the things that he did were great moves. Some of them didn't work out, but he made great moves. He's always an aggressive coach or a GM. So I don't know.
Right. Well, I mean,
but he's in it for you're there for 17, 18 years, I think. You kind of wear out your welcome with ownership.
Yeah, and nobody bats 1,000, but he pulled off the Paul George, Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett trio that won a championship, and he was able to parlay those guys into, Jalen Rose or not Jalen Brown and Tatum to give yourself 2.
Yeah.
So I mean overall I think that's a pretty nice grade as a GM.
I'd take that on my resume.
So as we finish up our NBA talk, I've obviously said I think Brooklyn is going to win. And I think Brooklyn is going to end up playing Phoenix, would be my guess.
Okay. I can see that. I can see them playing Utah. I can see them play one of those 2 teams.
I'm rooting for Denver. I just don't think Denver's there. I think winning that series was great for them, but I don't think they go any further.
No, and I think whoever, if Dallas wins, I think they get knocked out of the next round. If the Clippers win, I believe they get knocked out of the next round. So.
Yeah, I do too. I'm rooting, obviously, for Dallas. I wanted to see one more young guy get through, but
I just love watching them play.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a Mark Cuban fan, but I love watching Dallas play. I love Luka's game.
Yeah.
It's to me it's like a little Larry Bird, a little Dirk, and a little Luka. I think it's an amazing game. I said during that draft that I realized that at the time I think Phoenix was under a lot of pressure to take Ayton because he was a local guy that he was known.
Right, and you had Booker.
Wasn't real well known,
yeah.
But I always said I would have taken Luka with that one pick.
Yeah.
But he didn't go till what, 3 or 4, right?
4.
So some other people obviously had some other things, and I think that, I definitely think that he was the one pick.
Well, Trae Young looks, I don't think he's ever going to be on Luka's level, but it's looking like, I know they made that trade and they got another first round pick that I think is Cam Johnson or Cam Reddish from the, the following draft with Dallas. But I mean, they're in the second round of the playoffs.
Trae Young has come on. Actually, Trae Young's been better than I thought he would be.
Yeah.
Because he's so slight. I always am concerned about somebody that has that kind of physical structure and build. That the NBA is a rough game.
Well, that's why, I know we say we may not have no Embiid this next round. So, it's lining up pretty nice for Atlanta. Or at least Embiid for the first couple games or maybe the first game. Right. But they've got some big bodies they can put against Trae Young where the Knicks don't. You got potential defensive player of the year, Ben Simmons. You got Thibault. You could probably put Harris on him from time to time. Philly's got a lot of defensive length, so we'll have to see how well Trae Young handles that. Because the Knicks just don't.
And it's got a breaking news alert.
Okay.
Expect the Falcons to trade Julio Jones to the Titans.
Huh. Why not? The Titans look pretty good.
The Titans could probably give them more of an immediate return than either Seattle and 49ers.
Right.
There's no question about that.
And now you're the Titans. You got.
You don't want to trade Julio Jones for somebody, and you're going to get the benefit in 24, 25, or 25, 26, right?
I think you're just taking the pick and getting rid of the money because you can't even sign your draft picks right now if you're the Falcons.
You can't sign your draft picks.
And you want to trade them away from the conference to a team that doesn't really, I don't think you want to trade him. You don't want to see him again in the playoffs if you're Atlanta. If you made it, if you somehow make the Super Bowl and you're playing against Julio Jones and the Titans, then great on both sides. But I think you feel like the Titans is one of the places that were rumored. You're not going to see him the most. He's going to do the least. No. And again, now the Titans, you got AJ Brown on one side, Julio on the other, Derrick Henry in the backfield. That's a pretty nasty offense.
Agree. That's a strong team.
And former Steeler Bud Dupree holding it down on the outside linebacker position.
We will see that.
Yes.
We'll see how good Bud Dupree is without
T.J. Watt.
Yes.
Well, that's about all the NBA I've got. You said you got some ladies softball to talk?
Yeah. I saw Oklahoma lose to James Madison in the first round. Oklahoma is a dominant team. And I've also seen enough of Oklahoma during the course of the year to know that, they can come out of the loser's bracket and win. Now, they have to beat JMU twice today. And I think a team that averages more than 9 runs a game could do that. I think they were a little shocked. I think they've gotten their mojo back. I think they're gonna beat them twice today. And I think Alabama will beat Florida State, and then the series will start tomorrow night. It will be Alabama and Oklahoma. In that one, I would still lean toward Oklahoma, but Alabama's got a really good team. That's going to be a really good series. And I respect where JMU is, but now you're having to pitch this girl every day.
Yeah.
You don't really have any depth behind her, and Oklahoma hasn't had to do that. Now is the time when, and I know they don't want to be called Cinderella because they've been a good team, okay, but I'm going to call them Cinderella. What the characteristic of a Cinderella team is lack of depth or lack of quality depth. They've got a good starting lineup, as good as anybody's starting lineup, and you get to have to put more players in and do more things. They don't have the depth of an established elite team, and that's what Oklahoma is.
Okay.
The other thing I want to talk about was a little bit of Naomi Osaka.
Yeah.
And I think this whole issue of mental health is not getting the respect it should get. I think if you're getting interviewed, and one of the things that she said is that when you're constantly asked negative questions, it puts doubt in your mind. Should you have done this or should you have done that? And I think she's got a really, really good point. Plus, I don't think that the interviews are that good to begin with. When you're interviewing these coaches in the third or fourth inning of a national championship game, this softball, God love them, they've done a great job. But they've got more things on their mind than answer your question. And then a lot of the post-game interviews I've seen are just terrible. I'm hoping what happens here is we have more respect for people's mental health. We give people space. We don't try to pound somebody within 30 seconds after the game is over. Let people relax, let them think, let them adapt. So I think what she's doing is great, and I'm hoping that it has an impact.
Well, obviously, as someone that's been through, even hospitalization due to mental health on my end, I obviously do feel for her. And I think it should have been left where it was initially until this tournament made a big deal about it. Whereas if you don't,
Agree.
then you get fined. But at the same time, and again, I don't watch any of the interviews personally. Like I'll watch, Charles and Kenny and Chuck goof it up on, Countdown. But like when it's Super Bowl Sunday, I wait till the game starts because that's all I want to watch is the game. I don't really care about the interviews. But at the same time, like I understand the network is paying all this money. And the reason that people pay this money is fans, and fans want personal connections. And even if it is stupid anecdotes that Tiger Woods would shoot out, I mean, that made Tiger Woods, even though he seemed, going back to the history of me, I never thought he was a very genuine person. But people bought into it, and people want to see that. And that's part of, I don't, like I said, I assume if you're the PGA and your LPGA and your other, and tennis and all these other places, like you're nervous that if you open this door, no one's ever going to do an interview. And maybe that'll end up being a good thing overall. But I think you just leave. I just think you just leave it where it was and don't push it. Where it's like you don't want to do it, that's fine, but we are going to fine you, and because again, I don't think.
And they were trying to extend it to have sanctions and everything else.
Yeah.
You know what? Remember Marshawn Lynch made a career out of not doing a post-game press conference.
Yeah.
And the more he didn't do it, the more people wanted to talk to him. So what happened? He got commercials.
And then when he did talk, he just said, or you just go back to, my favorite, Rasheed Wallace, who eventually, every time he was asked, he would simply say, both teams play hard. So,
yeah.
I mean, you can be the most boring interview, and eventually maybe people will stop talking,
They'll get tired of you.
Get tired of you.
Respect. If somebody says it's affecting my mental health, you got to respect that.
You got to respect that. And again, but I understand that, you need people to talk because that's the deal you made with the network, and having fans develop a personal connection is why people watch the sport. And, at some point it's like there's, you want to make the job as easy for everybody as possible and not put people through the loop. But at the same time, there's certain things that have done that have built you to this place of popularity and money. And if you don't have that, if you're losing parts of that and it affects the bottom line, then obviously it affects, more than just yourself. But I think as long as you just keep the fine system in place is where it should stay. No sanctions. But just understand if you don't talk, you're going to be fined. And I think that that's an acceptable meet. Because I think that makes the most sense, Because, I think we've seen with people like Kyrie Irving, who probably, it seems like he may have, I think he's got some legitimate reasons for doing the stuff that he does.
Agree.
But I also feel like he's the kind of person that would use that loophole constantly, whether or not he was feeling it or not. And I do just feel like there's other players like that would just, and again, I don't really watch the interviews, but I know that for some people it's a big deal. And for network execs, it's a big deal.
Yeah.
And if that's what's putting, money on your table,
That's it.
And again, I hate this talk because I don't like the thought of it, but, everybody has certain things about their job that they don't love doing. And, obviously it shouldn't be things that affect your mental health, and there should be ways around it, but, there's got to be some compromise, and I think compromise is the fine.
Agree.
And now we can go to a more pleasant segment, why the Steelers are making me feel stupid again.
Okay. Why are the Steelers making you feel stupid again?
Because I'm excited about a couple of quotes that I've heard already. One is that Najee Harris, the Steelers' first-round running back draft pick, had to be sent home because he's working too hard and studying too hard. Two is that...
And I just saw an interview with him where he's already started his foundation for the homeless in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, but I'm just talking about the on-field,
Yep.
That Dwayne Haskins can quote-unquote throw a football through a car wash and the ball not even get wet.
It's a good quote.
It's a good quote. And that Ben Roethlisberger is, and all... I'm not even going to talk about his "I chose to take a pay cut" quote, because whatever, it's Ben Roethlisberger who's going to say some hyperbolic statements. But the fact that, everyone, including him, is studying really hard and they're very excited about it's like go back to college. They're excited about Matt Canada's offense. And, I know I shouldn't, but I'm buying back in.
All right, and so we think that Matt Canada's offense is going to be a significant departure from Randy Fitcher's offense.
I know that every new offensive coordinator gets the same quotes, but I'm buying this one for some reason.
All right.
Well, I mean, I guess part of it is you do hear that there was a lot more motion involved, and the Steelers were not a team that ran a lot of motion last year. They sort of got to the line, they were in their positions, and they just sort of went with it. And you look at modern offenses. Modern offenses are about confusion and movement, and having a lot of people around, so they don't know exactly who's lining up where they're going. And you'd like to see the Steelers sort of innovate,
And there was nothing confusing about the Steeler offense because you and I could call it plays.
Yes, frustratingly so. But again, as we said, every year, it's still a patchwork offensive line. A 39 or 40-year-old quarterback who looks like he doesn't have the arm strength anymore coming back, and a coaching staff that's 3-6 in the last decade in the playoffs, but they won. All the stupid preseason quotes, I'm like, okay, maybe.
Well, I've been excited about the draft pick since they made it, so I'm excited about to see what he's going to do.
Yeah. Like I said, I thought he seems like a great person, and I'm excited that he's going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. It's just my fear was that, if you can't block, no matter how talented the guy is behind the line of scrimmage, you're not going to win. But as I said, they made a bunch of stupid quotes that they make every single year to some extent. And,
they bought you in.
And they bought me in. Everybody's in the best shape of their life.
Well, I've got an interesting entertainment moment.
Okay.
I'm taking the plunge and getting Apple TV on Friday.
For? The Stephen King?
I guess I want to watch Ted Lasso.
You know what? If you're in the mood, I would say, as somebody that watched Ted Lasso, and we'll watch season 2, no questions. Don't go in expecting to have the greatest show of your life, but it's a well done, feel good show.
And I like Jason Sudeikis.
Yeah, but this isn't the Jason Sudeikis we know and love from other movies. This is a very happy, very chill. Like I said, I also feel like, and again, it's well done, so there's no question about that. But I think when the show premiered during the pandemic, it was this breath of positivity and fresh air. And hopefully it can be that for people that haven't seen it yet. But just have your
Plus the Stephen King things, I want to see those too. So.
And the M. Night Shyamalan show was pretty good. So.
Yeah, that's the other thing I want to see. So we're taking the plunge. You guys come and hook it up for me on Friday.
Okay. That sounds good.
I don't think I had a food moment, but I will have a food moment if you visit me this week. We'll go somewhere. We'll create some food moments.
Yes.
If you come to Tampa, we will create some food moments.
And then I guess this is my only food moment. I sent you pictures last time, but I made Detroit style pizza again yesterday.
And
came out great. I got the crust down. I would just say follow recipes. I know it's stupid, but I mean that's pretty much all you have to do.
Did you make your sauce this time?
I did. I got a jar of San Marzano tomatoes. I put them in the food processor to make it into a sauce as opposed to just the chunks of tomatoes. Had some organic tomato paste, a little basil, a little garlic, and just a pinch of sugar. And I mean, that's not an exciting sauce for anybody listening, but that's a very natural tasting, non-bitter, just let the tomatoes do their job sauce.
All right, good pizza sauce.
Yeah. And again, the San Marzano tomato, that's the key.
Because if you Marzano there's no bitterness, there's no heartburn. It's great. They're great tomatoes.
Yeah, and anyone that's ever had Pizza Hut understands the metallic taste that tomatoes can have. Shout out to Pizza Hut. Or Domino's. That real bitter, metallic taste. The San Marzano tomato does not have that. It's got a very pure, nice tomato. And like you said, if you're a heartburn sufferer, supposedly you suffer a lot less. Like it's a lot less acid. It's a lot less acidic. It's just the soil they grow it in. So San Marzano tomato is the way to go. And I think that's about it.
Yeah, and well, if you come visit this week, we will do the show together live in the same room for the first time.
Yeah, in a long time, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So until next week, enjoy the playoffs.
Watch some Women's College World Series. You won't be disappointed.
All right.
And if you haven't watched Mayor of Eastwood, go watch it.
Yes.